Hi, my name's Kathy Miller and this week we're going to look at Liquid Pigments by Lifecolor. Well, I'm sure you've all got millions of photos of weathered boxcars, but here's just a couple from my stash so you can see the effect we're after with the pigments. We want to make the paint look slightly faded. There's a little bit of dirt pooling around the edges, and quite frankly, most of the pooling is actually in the details, and that's very hard and fine to see in HO scale. So let's see how we do. So what are liquid pigments? Well, they're this new product that I've never tried before, so I thought they'd be good to have a go. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm used to MIG pigments and there's loads of other brands, and they're a powder, and basically you brush them on. You'd normally dull coat your model beforehand, and they don't stick very well. And sometimes, maybe not so much a MIG, but sometimes if you want to seal them, because it's say something like this that you're going to handle a lot, by the time you've sealed them, they've disappeared slightly. Now, I did used to use pastels and put them on with a slurry of liquid IPA, just isopropyl alcohol, and the pastel ground up with a X-Acto knife. That worked really well, and I really liked it as a product. So I'm going to see if this is as good or if it's different. So this is my boxcar, which I'm just going to use, something simple. This side's been sprayed with Dulcote. This side hasn't. It's straight out of the box plastic. This is a second-hand car I've got. I don't even know what make it is. It's just there. It's a bit battered down this side. Someone's obviously dropped it around a few bits. So there we go. Everyone's going to write in now and tell me what make it is. Excellent. So what do Lifecolor do? Well, they've got a number of kits. If I look on the side, they advertise them. They've got a detail emphasizer and tanks vehicles. They do rain and dust. They do, this is the Rust Wizard. They do this one for trains and tracks, which I bought because I thought it'd be interesting. They also do hulls and wooden decks, wings and fuselages, and rail and weathering, which seems to have sort of browns and greens and oranges in. So what's actually in your pack? Well, you get 5 bottles of varying different colours, and they claim that it's non-smelling, which is good, I guess. I don't find that most of the products I use are that bad. And the other thing that's in here is just a remover. So if you're not happy with what you've put on, you can remove it. And that's why they say these are so good. They're paints, but they are removable. Should you change your mind, you don't like the effect, you put too much on, which makes it amazing if it does work. So put those there. And they suggest that you either brush it on with a brush or an airbrush. I'm not going to do an airbrush because that involves decamping to the garage, and actually most people I think doing weathering do it by hand, not by airbrush for this layer. They might have done all the preceding layers, but by the time I'm on to pigment layers, they're more into the brush and the finer control. So maybe we'll have a go with that later. So what are we going to do? Well, I've got this. That's my dull side. This is my normal side. They say you shouldn't use it over a dull side. I just thought, because so many people I know who do this kind of modelling will end up with a coat of Dulcote on, it'd be interesting to see if it worked. So we've got a rail dust, a frame dirt, but actually I quite like this. It's just a paler colour of this. It's brake dust, the one I was missing. So what I'm going to do is give it a really good shake. It doesn't seem to have gone in. They're quite thin when you look at them, and they flow like a wash into the edges. So on one sort of half, I'm going to do it just flowing around the edges. On the other, I'm going to put it onto the panels as well and see how that looks. And then on the other side, I'm going to do the same, but with the dull coat and see if it works. So I'm just going to put it on with a normal brush. They do say if you're going to airbrush it, you might need to thin it. So does it flow? I ran the pigment along the rivet lines and the edges on this first half side to just see if it would sit into the detail thing. On this side of the door, I'm just going to put it on a lot more just thickly, but without being blobbed on. And it's literally just going to sit into the edges. Now I did give these a brief brush with soap and water and dried them off before I did this, so that they weren't covered in grease or anything. That really will interfere with putting on things like pigments. I'm putting quite a fine coat on here. On the second half side, I also ran it along the face of the panel, though I have to say on this shiny boxcar it did ball and didn't sit very well. So that's the side with the first coat on. Right, very carefully holding it. I'm now going to do it on the dry brush side. Interestingly, it sat much better on the dull-coated side. It certainly sat along the rivet lines better, and when I came to actually flow along the whole half side that was doing the whole panel lines, very much better. So next up I'm going to use the Frame Dirt, which is a slightly darker version. Good shake as normal. Now they don't smell at all, these, so that is good. And this is much darker, so I'm intrigued to see how this goes on. So this was the first side. As I put on the darker colour, some of the original coat was still a bit damp, so it blended in, and it did sit around the detail well. I made sure I did the wheels because they need to be brownish as well, and some of the trucks. But again, none of these have been primed, so it didn't sit as well as perhaps it could have. So I've got it on. Yep. And you can see it has clung around, but obviously on the sides here where I haven't done the whole panel, I think it just looks a bit mucky on this panel. There's a few patches where it hasn't stuck to it particularly well. So maybe not totally for the panel. So I've got my brush and I'm just going to use the remover, which is here, and I'm going to just wipe it away from the panel lines, well, from the panel faces, just leaving it in the lines. It seemed like I spent more time wiping it off than I did putting it on. And along where the rivet lines were, it was really important to do that. But I also did it along where the panels had been done, because on the side that didn't have the dull coat, there were some bubbles of where the pigment just hadn't stuck to the side, and I streaked those again to try and get them to sit properly on the surface. So whilst that's drying, I'm just going to do the roof. It's going to be interesting. So I'm just going to put some, I want quite a dark one, Frame Dirt. I use that one. Let's use Frame Dirt. And I'm just going to streak it all over the top, running down. Okay, so that's got lighter and lighter, and I'm going to use Smoke, which is the darkest one I have. It's kind of a blue liquid with a black pigment in it, and I'm going to put that on and see if that can be used just to add a little bit of a depth to this. Here we go. You might be able to see it's actually not stuck as well to the edge as I'd like. So I'm just going to take my black one, give it a good shake, and use that to feed up from the bottom and feed into the rest, just to make it a little bit more sort of tied in. So I brushed up from the bottom, making sure that I covered any patches that had been missed. One side had a lot of blobs in the middle, which was a little unfortunate, but this hopefully covered them all and got rid of any of those issues. And I'm just going along the bottom again, just try and build up a little bit extra. So I took some darker Frame Dirt and I put it along the bottom, and then I put it along the top as well, and finally I took some remover and again I streaked it down to get some of that vertical dust running down, very clear, simple streaks downwards of the darker colour. At this point, I wasn't quite getting the streaking I wanted, so I went and splodged very small dots of the Frame Dirt onto the side, and then I took remover again and I streaked it down. And this just gave me a heavier accumulation of the streaking. And on this colour box car, if you want it to look weathered, sometimes you just have to put a little bit extra on. So here we are, the finished product. Well, I quite like it. It certainly can give a subtle effect. The reason I'm umming is I do think it looks better on the side that had the Dulcote on first. And if I look down the side and get the light to reflect, this side just looks a bit duller, obviously. And where I was putting the washes of pigment on the side just to dull it all down a bit, it stuck better. So it did, but then it didn't run perhaps as easily. So I think the weathering, the dark around the rivets, is better on the side that it ran, and the bit on the face is better on the side, probably here. I can see watermarks, and I think I probably end up going over it with another coat of remover, because otherwise I can see the watermarks and they just don't look realistic. So I'll probably do that and then take the final photos. In this week's adventures of the mini Cathys, mill-scale Cathy and end-scale Cathy become art critics. So it occurred to me that this was a bit like an art gallery. So let me just walk you through the masterpiece that is Liquid Pigments. Now this is a modern impressionistic side. There's the odd patch where it just didn't quite take. So you look at it and you go, oh, wonderful. Wonderful use of colour, expression. I'm quite sure what it is, but it looked great. Wonderful, yes. Like this one a lot. And then we move along, and, ooh, yes. Now I like this one. I like the pooling, the detail, photorealistic technique. Very good point of painting. I like it, yes, yes, very good, very good. So what do we think this is? Yes. I think like some art, you know, the little pixelated pointillistic one, better from a distance. But I have to say, this one has the whole enchilada. It looks very good, yes. Yes, this one will pass muster. I like this. Oh, this is the dull-coated side. Oh yes, yes, you can tell. You can tell. Oh yes. Oh, stop being so pretentious. It's just liquid pigments on the side of a plastic boxcar. Not modern art, you know. Oh, some people. I'm not being snobby. Oh, I'm being cultured. Oh, it's not modern art. I mean, look at it. It's just paint. I know all art is paint, but it's just paint on the side of a boxcar. Though I will admit the last one looks better, to my rather uncultured eye. Well, it seems that end-scale Cathy is no lover of modern art, but will she change her mind next week? Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, subscribe to me on YouTube. Alternatively, like me on Facebook, Cathy Millett Modelling, or on my website, cathymillett.co.uk. See you next week.